Welcome to the Jack Westin MCAT podcast with your hosts, Eric Olson
and Jayden Garcia.
Welcome back to the Jack Westin MCAT podcast with your hosts, Eric and Jayden. It's Thanksgiving week in real time. It's Tuesday before Thanksgiving, if we're being specific, when we're recording this. And we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the advice that we have been thankful for as we've gone through kind of our period of medical education. And I think, there are a million things that could be said, a million pieces of advice I think that we could share. I think I could give more advice than I've received. I don't know if that's the case for you, Jayden, but I feel like I have a lot of advice. Probably not that much of it is very good, and maybe that's why I don't give it out as much. But before we get into that, Jayden, what's going on in your life right now? Tell me something you're thankful for right now.
I am thankful for change. I have told you before, Eric, that I was on a pretty rough rotation, and I think doing that for an extended period of time eventually weighs on you.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize how much it had been weighing on me until more recently during my switch. I've quickly realized how little quality of life I was having, and I'm grateful that some of the challenges we go through are temporary. And when things get better, just that opportunity to realize how good you have it sometimes, and you don't realize it. So yeah, I'm actually living a great life right now.
I was gonna say, so it sounds like you're not doing that really hard thing anymore.
No, we switched what is it, like I'm on week 2 of 11 now of the new rotation, and I'm waking up at a more normal time. I'm going to bed at a more normal time.
I don't really believe that, respectfully.
I know.
More normal, maybe. Maybe closer to median, but I don't.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
It's nice. What about you, man? What have you been thankful for?
What am I thankful for? Well, I'm wearing this Patagonia, and Jayden called it out because it's my Michigan one it's for medical school, so I don't wear it very much anymore.
Go blue.
And I guess the answer to this question is going to be, I'm thankful for like administrators who kind of back us up and go to bat for us. And I guess sorry, I'm like all over the place.
No, go.
I didn't think about this beforehand, so I didn't put together like a linear thought process. But, we had like a lot of places, residents and med students as well will wear these Patagonia sweaters. And like, I feel like in my experience, maybe this is just my kind of narrow window, but I feel like maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, everyone was wearing these Patagonia jackets, and no sponsorship or anything. And then as time has gone on, like it feels like residents have kind of diversified into different brands of jackets and things. But anyway, at my residency program, they like don't wear like a branded jacket. Like we don't have like a departmental jacket that people wear. And so when my class got here, we were like, why is this not a thing? Like people, other residents around our hospital are wearing them, just not our program. And so we were kind of like, we should figure out, a way to make this happen. And so I kind of spearheaded the whole thing, and it was a lot of work, like way more work than I thought it would be. And I think that was because some of these other programs, at least around here, just kind of like found a distributor and like bought them kind of from Patagonia itself and then branded them after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But because they are as expensive as they are, we were like, maybe we can get some funding from the department to make this happen. So I was like in talks with all these admins in our department, like trying to figure out where we could get some money from. And ultimately one of our administrators was like, sorry, this is a really long story, but we're in it now. One of our administrators was like, yeah, I think we can make this happen. I think we can kind of bill it as like a Christmas gift, and they don't give us like enough money to pay for a whole jacket, but we can subsidize the cost for you guys. Like if you want a
Yeah.
jacket, then you pay $100 and we'll pay the rest, kind of a thing. And we were like, great. I don't think anyone expected any sort of uh, you know, financial subsidy on this sort of
Mhm.
purchase. Um, so we were happy with that. And then, a couple weeks went by and I hadn't heard anything. And so I reached back out and I was like, what's the deal with these jackets? Like, are we doing it? And the guy who I had been talking with said, yeah, it's a lot more complicated than I thought. Which in my head, I was like, this is probably the last thing on this guy's mind. Like at this first sign of trouble, he's just gonna drop it. He was
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's been a lot more work than I thought, and like I've had to talk with like the university, like the higher ups, and apparently the only way we can really do it is by saying that it's a uniform. And so
A
that's what we're gonna do.
dermatology special.
What?
A dermatology uniform. I love it.
A dermatology uniform, exactly. And I guess UAB has like recently changed their branding, like the logo of the university, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it was like a U, A, and a B, and they were all like touching. And it's basically the exact same thing, except they're all like separated by, a quarter of an inch of space. And I'm sure they spent like millions of dollars on this project, right? But anyway, they were like, we can bill it as a uniform, and we can't do it until next calendar year because that's when like the new logo becomes available to us. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's great. Like, thanks for doing all that. Like again, I didn't really expect that it was going to be a priority. And then he was like, yeah, and because it's a uniform and everything, like we'll just pay for the whole thing. So
Oh,
so I was pretty happy about that. I mean, it
yeah.
it feels silly like talking about it because it's such a small thing. But I put a lot of work into it. And again, like I wasn't expecting anyone else to really care. And so I feel like our department is really supportive. That's one example. And I think, I feel the same way about the faculty and like the special interests that each of us have. Like they're willing to go to bat for us and help us with our interests. So that's been good. It's been helpful and a supportive environment for the last, 4.5 months, almost 5 months, I guess. But I'm pretty excited about getting a new jacket. I've had this one for I think 6 years, and I wear it all the time. I mean, I wore it probably like I've probably worn it well over 1,000 times. Like I wore it pretty much every day during med school,
Very
and
great. They're great jackets. They
they're
just
really
like
good jackets.
they
They hold
last
up.
forever. They keep you warm for,
Yeah,
yeah, no, that's, yeah, I can't second that enough, Eric. I think we're having a lot of pre-meds listen to us talk, but I would, I mean, we talked about giving some advice, but I think one that came up or came to my mind as soon as you were saying that is like try and find somewhere when you're looking for medical schools or residencies, whatever it is, that you hear those who are in the program, in the med school, whatever, who can give lots of those type of experiences where they feel supported. If you're having a hard time doing that, it may not be the best, most supportive place, but this is already a hard road no matter what stage you're in, and having those type of people who will go to bat for you, who are invested in your education or training is, oh man, it's so refreshing if it's there, and
it
devastating if it's not,
it
because
can
it's
be
hard.
hard to tease out. I feel
It is. It's,
like you kind of have to talk to the people who've been there and who are there
yeah,
currently. But even then, like you don't always get a straight answer.
no.
But I think, talking to folks is probably the best way to get a feel for things, from that kind of a perspective.
Yeah, and it's probably hard to do that with like some of the people listening maybe narrowing down their school list, or we're getting, I think acceptances have started to go out for some of the pre-meds and stuff, and
Yeah.
it's hard to do that for 20 programs, but certainly when you're kind of coming down to the last couple of choices, definitely spend time talking to lots and lots and lots of people. And I think good programs are, med school programs or residency programs are always trying to provide you with resources of people you can talk to. I know people left and right ask about our program, and I'm constantly putting people in touch with various individuals who come from similar backgrounds or kind of experiences. So it's a good thing to do, really, to
Yeah.
let the program just spend time talking to people.
Well, okay, I mean, you're kind of getting into it, but I think the way we had talked about kind of presenting advice again,
Mhm.
and the reason that we thought of this is like, things that we're grateful for, like what is advice that we were grateful for? Like what's something we could share with you all that was something that was shared with us that
Mhm.
we ended up being thankful for in the long run. And hopefully we can share something with y'all that you would be thankful for down the line. And so we wanted to talk about maybe one piece of advice as you started studying or were in the midst of studying for the MCAT, since this is the Jack Westin MCAT podcast after all. And then one piece of advice as you got into medical school and kind of started down that track, because ultimately that's where hopefully all of our listeners are headed. And so we want to help you guys with taking the test, but we want to help you be successful in the long term as well. So Jane, what do you want to start with? I guess probably MCAT if we're
Yeah,
trying to be chronological about it.
really funny because I ran into my MCAT tutor like a month ago. I didn't actually run into like I saw him in the airport and I hadn't seen him for like 6 or 7 years or whatever, 6 years maybe. Um, and he was on an important phone call, I could tell, and I was like running to my gate, so I really couldn't go across.
You didn't say hi.
I didn't, I regret that,
Well,
honestly. I plan on texting him at some point and telling him. Um, but anyways, like the relationship's really strong with me and him. He was a really great guide for me at a time where I had lots of doubts about my abilities. And I think a piece of advice that he gave me that I still hold true or hold dear to my heart is I recently had, as soon as we had started the program, I met with him and I expressed my concerns about, you know, how I would perform on the test. And he came out pretty quick and said, like, this is something, if you want it, you can have it. It really depends on how much you're willing to give. And that was hard to buy into in the moment because you think everybody around you is smarter than you, and there's a lot of this imposter syndrome that floats around pre-medical and beyond. Um, but he reemphasized that almost every meeting in some way. I remember he shared with me like this Michael Jordan video. It was like 2 to 3 minutes long about practice and how Michael Jordan would try and emulate everything he possibly could in practice so that when it came to a game time, it was no different. It was just muscle memory almost. And I watched that video before every important test or thing that I do when I have time. So I think it's true. I think I saw that with my own students. If you put in the work, if you're willing to work more than other people along that bell curve, the odds of you landing where you want to be or at a good place to set you up for success is really, really high. It's just pretty rare. And I think, Eric, you could probably attest to this. Pretty rare that we've had people who couldn't do it if they were willing to listen and put in the work to do it. I don't know if I don't know. I guess I was speaking for you, Eric, but I don't know if you found that to be true.
yeah, I mean, I think the converse has been more like striking to me, which is when I've had students who are coming into it and being like, yeah, I'm going to study for like 4 weeks and I'm also like in the middle of class and I'm taking all these tough
Yeah.
classes and like I'm just going to take it at the end of 4 weeks and like hope that I do okay.
Yeah.
And that's like such a foreign idea to me because the MCAT was so paramount in my mind. And I still think, I mean, I think, each year the way that they evaluate applicants, I think changes a little bit, but there is one, universal standard by which people can be evaluated one against another from an intellectual standpoint, and it's the MCAT. And so it was strange to me that people came in with that mindset of like, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do the bare minimum and like hope to scrape by. I don't know. And those people didn't do very well, and then they struggled to get admitted to medical schools. And so I don't disagree with you. Let me before I go any further, I just have to ask: didn't you like play basketball with Michael Jordan at some point?
I did, yeah. Uh, he and I are kind of homies, but no.
All
I
right,
did
all
play
right.
ball. I did play some basketball with Michael Jordan um, as a teenager. Obviously, respect everything about these high-profile athletes. A plug for a book that I think is so spot on about succeeding in life, and it's written from an athlete's perspective, but totally applicable to medicine. And it's called Winning. It's by the trainer of both Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant,
Mm,
and he uses a lot of their demeanor, their uh, kind of approach to various problems they had throughout their career to get past it, whether it was winning a championship or getting through an injury or whatever it was. They were just ferocious. They had a mentality that's just unparalleled. And I think there's a lot to learn from athletes. So, really great book for anybody who enjoys sports or feels like they could relate to that.
yeah. Well, I love the idea of the of like having watched a video that was influential. Sometimes I watch this video. I mean, I like motivational speeches.
Yeah.
Then there's a video that I have watched a handful of times about Buster Douglas, who like fought Mike Tyson,
Oh,
and he was like a huge underdog, and then he ended up
yep.
winning. Or I don't know if he won, but he like knocked Mike Tyson out, at least knocked
Yep.
him down.
You did.
And there's this great video that's basically like you got to have a good reason for doing what you're doing. And like Buster Douglas did it for his mom, sort of a thing.
Oh, wow.
And
You got to
it's
send this
just
to me.
it's shot really well. Like the music is really good, and the speaker is captivating. Anyway, sometimes I'll watch that when I'm struggling with something. And it's I'm pretty sure I started watching it or watched it for the first time when I was studying for the MCAT as well. So there's a lot. I feel like you need a lot of motivation when you're deep into
Oh,
the MCAT study system. It just it takes it
hard.
out of you.
It's so hard. Like I was sitting next to these scribes who were helping our department out. And I just feel terrible. Like there three of them had applied. Between the three of them, I think they have one interview combined. Like two haven't received
Oh
one
wow.
interview. They're from the University of Michigan, like a great undergraduate program. And so I say this like this is a hard time. And so to your point, every bit of motivation you can grab, I think makes a difference. So
Yeah, and for what we have a couple of individuals similar, like a couple. I think they're medical assistants, but they're like educated at UAB, and I think one of them got into a DO school, and the other one has one interview. And I think I just want to put it out there, like not that anyone's asking, but when I look at people who are applying right now, I'm like, still have no idea. It's only been a few years, but I have no idea how I got in,
yeah,
Like I don't think that anyone who gets in, even to like the great programs, is any
no,
better than anyone else. Like it's
no,
honestly speaks to the difficulty of being on admissions committee, if anything.
yeah.
But I just feel for people who are applying and having a hard time of it, because I think you could be just as good as anyone else, and just the luck of the draw sometimes is not in your favor. To give you my piece of advice,
Yeah,
I think I want to move away from this. Um, and honestly, it was a similar situation. Like Jayden and I, we both had kind of tutors who walked us through things. Um, and I was not, I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have like any friends who were in medicine. I had some other pre-med friends, and none of my family's in medicine. So it was kind of like learning stuff on the internet, but even then, like how much can you really trust and learn from, Reddit and things like that? So I didn't, all that to say, I didn't really know what I was getting into. And I knew that I was a good test taker. And so I wanted to kind of capitalize on that and do well on the MCAT, but I didn't know what to expect. And so I went into kind of one of these first meetings with my tutor, and I remember him being like, here's how important the MCAT is, and like, here's how much time you should be putting in. And I mean, and I've said before, I started in September and studied all up through late May was when I took the test, May
Mhm.
19th. Not that you're asking. Was that the same day that you
Same
took?
day as me, man.
Was
Same.
it? Okay. And so we like calculated all the time I was going to spend. Like we figured out how many hours I was going to be putting in every week. And he said at one point, like, if you are doing well in a class, I had a 4.0 at the time, and he was like, if you're doing decently well in a class, like if you have a B and it's between like making sure you're on top of your MCAT stuff and like getting 100% on a test to bring your grade up a couple points, like you should
Yeah,
do well in the MCAT, because like your science GPA is what it is, and like these numbers are more stable, but the MCAT is like a one-off that is going to be seen as a single number on your application, and like there's going to be weight put to that. I think you could debate that point, but I agree with it personally,
100%.
and it made a big impact on me. I was like, wow, of all the things that I'm doing, of all the things that I've done, like this maybe is not the most important thing per se, but it's the most important thing for me to be doing right now. It trumps
Yeah,
everything else. And so, and that was kind of the conversation we had. It was like, here's all the effort you should put in, and this is like a real difficult thing, and you should work really hard to do well. And it's basically what you said. It's achievable. You have to put in time. And maybe that's why, when I look at people who are coming into it, like, I'm going to study for a few weeks and see how it goes. And I'm like, no, that's not the right attitude to have. And I think it started with that conversation that I had with my tutor up front. And he was like, this is not a joke. You have to be serious. You have to put in time. And I think we both did that and did well. I
yeah,
think we've seen a lot of individuals who haven't done that and don't do quite as well. I think, is it possible to get lucky? Yeah, absolutely. Like it happens for
yeah,
sure. But if you want to, ensure that you do well, which is I wasn't leaving anything up to chance, then you have to really work at it. And so I think that has influenced the way that I look at tests,
hmm
down the line as you take, board exams and things like that in medical school and then in residency. Um, it has to be your focus, and I'm thankful for that. I think it's served me well over the years.
It's funny. I remember my interview I had at Harvard Med. I for sure thought I wasn't going to get in because I'm not sure my interviewer could even hear me. We were like, they were doing construction during the summer, late summer, before school started for the med students. And we were in this room where it was just this loud jackhammer the whole time next door. And I felt like I was screaming at him to answer questions. And one question, he had my application in front of him and he was looking through it and said, I noticed you have one B plus here and the rest of your grades are A's. Tell me what went wrong or why that is. It was something like that. And I remember making this judicious decision that there was no way that I could put in the effort I wanted to for the MCAT and also get an A in this organic chemistry lab. You remember the lab, Eric? It was like not a walk in the
I
park
love the
physics.
organic chemistry lab. One of my favorite classes. No, I'm serious. I'm
You
actually
loved it.
serious.
I took it at a really bad time, I guess, where I was
Yeah.
like in the thick of MCAT and whatnot. But I remember like it was a course that was entirely based on like just doing the work. And if you did that and you worked hard, you'd get an A. But I knew to get that A, it would be
Too much.
probably 5 more hours of MCAT or 5 more hours in that class that I'd have to probably take away from the MCAT. And I just couldn't make that decision to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my tutor completely agreed. And we knew that from the beginning of the semester. It's not like it was a surprise to me when they were walking us through like how you get the A. And I'm like, oh. So I didn't want to C, I didn't want a D, but I made the decision to kind of have this blemish on my record. And when I responded and told the guy that, like, hey, I tried to prove to you that I could do well in the classroom setting, but I also knew it was equally, if not more important, to show you that I can perform from a standardized test perspective so that you have objective information.
Hmm.
And he said, great response, and then move forward. And so I do think this comes up. I do think students are going to have to make these types of decisions. It's something I certainly have not regretted. I definitely would have regretted it taking 2, 3 points off my MCAT score. That would have not been good. So yeah, it comes up. The second point I wanted to make is another piece of advice that came to mind as you were talking. I think some of the students we've had together, Eric, who have come in with the mentality of, I'm just going to take a few weeks. If you ask them, a lot of them have this kind of perception that you can take this test 2, 3 times, no problem. And as somebody who has sat on a committee before, for med school, like, don't take that approach. Please do not. You should go into this. This is a one-time test for me. And I'm going to lay it all out on the line from the beginning.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just don't know that. I've met, and I know you have too, but for our listeners, people who tell me like, oh yeah, I got the 490 on my MCAT, but that was just for me to get a baseline. They use
That's what the practice tests exist for.
right? But this is like not common knowledge to everybody.
Yeah.
They truly believe and treat it like their business school friends or heck, even dental school, where you can take the GMAT or the GRE as many times as you want and they just take the high score. That does not work at all for medical school.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's something, if it's already done, it's already done. Really try and get it the next time. And we're happy to help you out with that here at Jack Westin. Just a quick plug. But for those who haven't taken it, it's really, really important you treat this as like a one-time only.
Yeah. I love that. Again, I'm just thinking about the tests I've taken, like, can you fail it? Can you fail step one? Like, yeah, theoretically you can. You can retake it. Like, why would you go into that with that mentality? It's not a good look.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So moving kind of from the MCAT to starting medical school, and I'm interested to hear, Jayden, I feel like you've had some good mentorship over the years, but I'll go first in the interest of alternating. So like, the idea being advice that we were thankful for as we started medical school. And I really don't think I've been thinking about this all day. And I really don't think that I got very much advice going into it. Or if I did, it didn't really stick. But I do, I think the one piece of advice that was proffered to me, and I'm trying to think who it would have been. The only person I could think that it might have been would have been a research mentor that I had, who have been pretty close with. And I know for a fact that he was like interested in surgery and like really liked doing surgery, but ended up and had thought to do surgery for a lot of his medical school training, and then thought about, well, I won't get into exactly what he got into, but like had a number of fields that he had been interested in and ended up choosing a particular field, and I think has been very happy and has been like involved in national leadership of that field and has really made an impact. And one of the things that he said to me was, or the thing that I can remember from that conversation was, to not, to keep an open mind, I guess, as far as specialties go. And I think, most people probably do that, but I think most people also come in with an idea of like, this is the thing that I want to do, and this is the thing that I've been planning on doing. And it's kind of a tough thing, because it's just a different, I don't know if I have a great piece of advice. Like my advice and the advice that I was thankful for was like, don't pick something and feeling like you have to stick with it.
Yeah.
Like you can change up until you start interviewing, like you can change what you're applying to. And even then, you don't have to submit your rank list. Like you can take a year off and apply the next year if you decide, at the last minute that you want to change your mind. But I think it's more difficult than just that, right? Because
Mm.
different specialties are so competitive, and there are different ways in which they would like you to demonstrate your competitiveness for that field.
Mhm.
And so I think it is a tough thing. If you think that you're going to be doing something competitive, then I think you have to show out in whatever it is that you're doing. And I think most programs, or many programs at least, would understand the idea that you changed your mind down the line. And if you showed excellence in whatever you were interested in the first year or two or three, then I think people understand that, and that's okay. But the more and more people that I talk to, maybe it's a derm specific thing, but I feel like so many people that I talk to in dermatology are like, yeah, I just didn't know. I didn't decide until late. And
Mhm.
it's not really, I think, what you would expect out of a dermatology resident, because it is one of the competitive specialties. And so maybe there's someone on the other end listening to this who's thinking, yeah, I really want to do dermatology. And I know that I have to start from day one, like meeting the faculty and like
Yeah.
getting into a research project. And, are those things helpful? Yeah, absolutely. But again, like I feel like more people than not that I talked to didn't know up front and ended up changing their minds. And I know other people who locked themselves into things and went through with whatever that specialty was that they felt like they had to do, and ended up very unhappy and having to switch out and start over. And so I think you have to be really introspective as you move along. And Ahmed talks a lot about like doing all the shadowing right now, and I think he's smart for it. Like you have to go and
Yeah.
see those things and like experience them to see if it is something that you're interested in. You have to think in the long term. Like, am I going to be wanting to do this in 30 years? Am I still going to love it? And there's so many different factors that go into it, and so that's a whole other discussion. But the advice again that I think had resonated with me was allow yourself to, don't get locked in, allow yourself to try different things and feel it out as you go. Because as I think I've probably explained on this podcast multiple times, like there were a number of specialties that I was like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I think probably dermatology was the sixth or seventh that I was like committed to, you know? And I think I could have been happy in some of those fields, but I think there's some that I would have been unhappy with in the long run. And
Oh,
so I think giving myself that leeway was a good thing. And I think you ended up doing something other than what you came in thinking you would do too as well, right?
I ended up very full circle. Like if you had asked me on day one, I would have been an ENT, but
Oh yeah.
I was off that train for a long time. Halfway through medical school at least. So it that's totally fine. And for our listeners, a religious leader who was a part of my organization in Boston, he was a physician and he went to residency with his dad. His dad had been an anesthesiologist for like 15 years or 14 years and had always wanted to be a cardiac surgeon and really suppressed that. I think for multiple reasons, but I mean, I don't know how ideal it is to go back when you're in your, I don't know, late 50s
Yeah.
to cardiac surgery residency of all things. But I think it demonstrates what Eric's saying here. You're in charge of your own ship at this point. It's a really cool feeling. Once you get that first acceptance, you're going to be a doctor. And yeah, you have things like residency that you have to think about, but at the end of the day, like it's a huge kind of step that kind of seals your fate in a very good way for something you've wanted. And so don't don't be or try not to be susceptible to being pushed into something that you don't want to do. And that can be hard because you meet people and you're like, I just want to be this person, but definitely take the time to ask yourself, do the research, spend time and lots of things to make sure you're not doing it for somebody other than yourself, because you should be driving that ship. I was also going to say, oh, no. Sorry. That was it. That was the piece of advice that I was going to offer. My mentor, I guess it was the primary care physician I was assigned to as a first year that I spent, once a week in clinic with. She had told me early on, it's quite disappointing that at the end of 4 years of medical training, and certainly beyond, that students have less empathy for their patients than they do on day one of being a first-year medical student. And she was trying to teach me early on that this can be a process that really jades you fast if you're not careful. And maybe it's not even jading you. It also, it's a hard road. You're not compensated the way you want to throughout it. It's easy to lose focus of why you wanted to do this in the first place. And so it's a great reminder to me frequently that I did this to help people. Yes, I want it to be something that feeds my family too, but trying to not lose sight of that, I think has helped me focus on the mission a little bit more in tough times, because it is really easy to lose sight of that. I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
How do you do that?
Oh, it's way hard. Like I'll be flat out honest. Yesterday, I was on a 30-hour call. Yes, I finished yesterday morning. I had never had a more difficult time in all of my residency, all of med school, with the load that I was given during that call shift. I was very angry. I was getting consults, like it just would not stop. And a lot of them were ridiculous, just flat out ridiculous.
What's a ridiculous consult in ENT? Sorry, it's not relevant, but I want to hear
I'll tell
it.
you what. There's a condition called laryngomalacia. If you ever have a kid, for everybody who's listening, and they're otherwise healthy, they're eating and drinking and growing appropriately, and they have like a high-pitched sound when you lay them on their back or when they're feeding or upset, that is something that primary care doctors manage. They just watch it. We don't do anything unless they're having oxygen problems or growth problems. Like it's a common disorder that every pediatrician in their any part of training would know about. And I got consulted twice in an already busy call where I'm managing facial traumas and airways and all kind of stuff for routine laryngomalacia workup. And I'm like, this is crazy.
There's no workup.
Like, there's no workup. This is a primary care doctor. This is not an ENT problem. And it's so easy to just take that out on the patients. You don't even realize it, right? I'm going into that room so mad that this is my 20th consult. It's 5 a.m. They were calling me last minute for a patient that's been here. Now I have to write a note on it. I've got to scope this baby. I've got to do all these things. Sorry, you're still seeing some of my frustration come out, but I had to take a deep pause after that shift and try and recenter and remind myself that not everybody is seeing things from the same perspective, has the same background, etc. And it's always about the patient at the end of the day. It's not their fault that they're here. I need to give them the best care. So I could go on and on about that, but I just want everybody to know it's a daily battle, literally daily battle. So yeah.
Yeah, people are coming to you because they need help, right?
Yeah, they don't know.
Especially in the hospital. Our consult, we have one dermatologist on our staff who does consults, who runs like the consult service, and then I think they're hiring someone next year who's gonna like split it with the first individual.
Yeah.
But the one that we have now, like, I haven't done consults. I've been on call, but I haven't like done a consult month specifically yet. But in the first couple of months, we did a few consult shifts to like see what like how it worked and all that. And we would go into these rooms and she would just like listen to patients for like 20, 30 minutes, just like listening to their story and all this stuff. And it wasn't like we needed that information for
Yeah.
our diagnosis and things. Like sometimes it helps, you know.
Yeah.
Um, you know, a lot of times it helps. And there, you know, you certainly have to take a history. But you know, you could take a 5-minute history and combine it with, you know, the physical exam findings, especially in dermatology, and it will give you a pretty good idea. And if you're not sure, then you can biopsy it. You know, that's pretty much like that's how things work for the majority of the time. But I remember, you know, these couple call shifts or consult shifts that I did with her, and she would just go in and be like, "How are things going? You know, tell me about it. How, you
Mm.
know, how can I help?" And just listen to patients. And the first time I was with her, I was like, "Man, this is really, I mean, we're really getting into it, you know?" Kind of frustrated similarly. But you know, it's such a good example. And you know,
Mhm.
maybe a different situation from the sorts of shifts that you're having, right? Because there's so many things going on, so much to do. And you know, we're busy as well, but she's just willing to be in there and make people feel heard. And
Yeah.
it's been a really good reset for me to remind me of like,
Yeah.
you know, she's busier than I am, and she's making the time to spend with these patients. Like you can make time to listen to them and help them feel heard and show some empathy, because it is, as you said, easy to get away from that.
Easy.
Well, good stuff. Good advice, Jayden. I'm going to take your advice to heart. Maybe not the MCAT stuff because I feel like I'm past that, but
It's a little past.
we actually do have an exam. We have a few exams during residency in dermatology.
Yep.
And one is the first one we take is called the basic exam, which makes me feel bad because it's got a bunch of stuff on it that I don't know anything about. And it's like this is the most basic thing you could possibly do in dermatology. But that's in April, I think. And I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, like it doesn't really count, so to speak. Like it's not. I think I think everyone passes. I want to say I don't think you can fail it, but I could be wrong. If you can fail it, it's like a very low threshold to pass.
Yeah.
And so like maybe there's not as much motivation to like really study hard and do well, but at the same time, it's like, you know, this is a stepping stone that you can use to make sure you're on the right track.
Hmm.
I've been sort of having an eye forward towards that exam for the last few weeks, and
Yeah.
haven't like started studying or anything yet. But I've been thinking about it, you know, and so I'll be thinking about these kind of test taking tips and things like that as I move forward. And it's not, you know, it's not anything as grueling as the MCAT,
No. Yeah.
but I'm getting back into standardized testing and
It doesn't go away, does
not particularly
it?
excited. No, it doesn't go away.
We have the same thing every February. Well, I should say every first weekend in March. In-service training exam, 7-hour exam. Um, like you, it's super easy. Most people take the approach of it doesn't matter. I don't take that approach. I think any opportunity to see where you're at. And you also, I don't know if you appreciated this, Eric, like the more you go through this process from pre-med to med to residency and beyond, you lose structure on what's expected of you
Yeah,
and how to
absolutely.
study. And it definitely is that way in residency because your first and foremost expectation is to perform clinically. And so it's easy to feel like, oh, I don't need to study. I don't need to actually open a textbook. Maybe dermatologists, I know radiologists don't really feel this way because so much of their training is actually still getting information from
Yeah,
textbooks and looking at things, whereas others may not. I imagine in derm, you guys still have to like
we do a fair amount of reading.
look at what different, skin exams look like or things under a microscope that may
Yeah,
only be found in a textbook. But I'm sure you feel like this, there's less pressure to do certain things and it's easy to not care as much, which is probably not the best approach.
um, yeah, I think it is kind of in the same vein as like your clinical rotations as a med student. Like there's
Yeah.
what you need to know to take care of people, and then there's what you need to know for like, I mean, as a med student, it was more for the test. As a resident, it's more like, I guess, for the test as well, but more just for like in case something comes up, like in case that person walks in.
Yeah.
because there are like a million and one things that are extremely rare that you should probably be familiar with.
Yep.
So it's a lot of that. And some, like you said, a lot of like looking under the microscope and things that are, very foreign to what we're used to. But yeah, the studying and the test taking doesn't go away, certainly. And it's interesting you say, I mean, I'm laughing that you say, I don't take that approach of not trying. I just feel like it's been ground into us, You
Yeah.
can't not study for a test.
Yeah.
Point.
Yeah.
It's just who we are. Well, anyway, thanks for being on here with me today, Jayden.
You
I'm
too,
thankful
man.
for you and your friendship.
Hey, man, we go back a while now, so it's been
And
great.
I'm thankful to share some information with you all. And so we hope the best for you guys and wish you luck as you go forward studying, taking the MCAT, and hopefully some of y'all or some of our previous listeners maybe getting acceptances this fall and into the spring.
So, happy
We'll leave it at that.
Thanksgiving to everybody. If you're not a United States citizen or really celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you still have a good meal and enjoy. Be a good week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye, guys.